For today's project I need non-flowing acrylic textile paints, which I usually buy at the local art supply store. When choosing paints, I don't look at the brand, but at the color. This is the very thick silk I will be painting on today. I'll tell you more about it later. I outlined the drawing with a pencil, which is quite acceptable for this kind of painting, and it will not be visible afterwards. You wouldn't see it. Acrylic dyes dry pretty quickly, so I put a small amount on the palette to keep it fresh, and I make sure to cover the jar with a lid. So I have three colors on my palette: black, orange and purple. And first I need to find the right wetness of my brush. And I start painting from not the most important and responsible parts. And right here you can see that my silk is not very fluid and the water is slow to absorb and spread out. As promised, I'll go into more detail about the silk later. In the meantime, I'm getting used to the colors, to the paints, because I use them rather seldom and my hand needs to remember how to work with them and when to dry the brush. When you paint silk without resist or gutta and the pattern must be preserved, it's much better to paint with a drier brush than with a wetter one. So today I'm painting mostly with a semi-dry brush. At this stage I need to get used to both the paints and this tinted silk, which I also rarely use for the painting. But this horse was painted on it, and here is this project too. Like I said, it's a very dense silk. I usually call it satin, but I think silk artists call it habotai or habotai or habotai. I don't know how to say it. I don't know exactly, but I think there are at least 20 momes here. This silk is not intended for painting. It's a very high quality lining silk. Initially, it didn't wrinkle and didn't absorb water at all. So I boiled it in water with baking soda for at least 30 minutes. And now it's perfect for this silk painting technique. And also it has acquired the scuffed effect, which I'm happy about. In general, I haven't painted animals for a while and I missed it. So I wanted to paint a portrait of a dog for a long time. And here is my reference picture. All I do now is basically look closely at the reference and compare each small section tonally with the others. I check how much darker or lighter it's than the neighboring ones. And only now I'm slowly getting used to the silk and to these paints. My hand is starting to remember how to work with them. Because I usually paint silk with dyes, not with paints. As you can see, my brush is really quite dry. The paint doesn't even penetrate the depth of the silk. But you can add a little water for it to give some watercolor effect. Now I'm going to speed up the video so it doesn't get too long. I just try to control the wetness of the brush and keep an eye on the tonal ratio, where it's darker, where it's lighter. In order not to lose my pencil drawing, I make a very small indentation from the pencil line, because it's easy to overlap it with dark paint and not to see that line afterwards. Because in some cases the spread of paints may cause deformation of the drawing, so I leave the pencil line visible just in case. I'm more or less used to this silk and these paints, and I feel even more confident now, and I'm able to paint more freely. Of course, if this painting was not on silk and let's say I was painting with watercolors, I would use a completely different approach. I would start painting in large areas, which I would detail later. And this approach doesn't work on silk. At least not for me. Maybe I'm not skilled enough. Because large shapes require a wetter brush. And precisely because there is a risk with the wetter painting technique to lose and distort the pattern, I have to paint smaller areas with a drier brush. It turns out to be quite mosaic-like. And in general, this technique requires quite a lot of concentration. In addition to controlling the brush wetness, I need to not get lost in the tonal correspondence to the reference. And all in all, it's not an easy task. As always, likes and comments are warmly welcomed. Thanks to everyone who shares their reactions to the video. It really makes a difference. So I thank you very much again. If all of a sudden the brush is too wet, you can dry that right away with a paper towel. Now that I feel even more confident, I can paint with the wetter brush. The colors blend better, flowing smoothly into each other, and it makes the image more whole and not so mosaic-like, when each little segment exists separately. And now, at this stage, I can gradually move into detailing. As you can see, I haven't gotten to the eyes yet. Yes, they are of course the most difficult, and I'm a bit scared to tackle them. So I'm saving them for last. And I will use the blue paint for eyes. I'll probably slow the video down again to show the painting of the eye in more detail. Here, unfortunately, the camera lost focus, but hopefully it'll be back soon. While I was painting the eyes, the dog's face had time to dry. I didn't show the painting of the second eye, so please write down below if it's necessary to show you more details about each element. But now I can take on the finest detailing. I really hope you liked this video, and if so, you'll give it a like. And here it is, the final result. I wish you the best of luck with your silk painting, and I'll see you.